Good afternoon and welcome to the episode of the Ad Drop Podcast. I'm your host, Terrance Biggs. As we spin around the world of college sports, I am pleased to be joined today by the Commissioner of the United East Conference, Stephanie Dutton. Commissioner, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. Busy time of year, exciting time of year, but appreciate you having me. Great to be here.
Anytime. Now, before we jump into the admin work, as a Met fan, let me ask you this. On a scale of 1 to 10, how fearful of you that things are going to unravel and can actually, let me rephrase it, continue to unravel down the last month or so of the season?
Like a 17. Like a 17. Yeah, a 17. The hilarious thing is that they win two games in a row, and I just get an email from the Mets saying, "Would you like to renew your tickets? Would you like postseason tickets?" And so, of course, they waited until we won two in a row. But no, 17. It's the tailspin's going to continue this year.
When we look at this team and we look at how I like Stearns, I like what he's trying to do, but it just seems like there's snake. But I like Mendoza, but I wish he would have a little bit more of the Buck Showalter fire to him. You seem like a nice, pleasant gentleman, but it's just like, could you get a little angry? Like your team is not tanking, but they're falling apart right now. You seem like you're about to go outside and mow the lawn. That's how calm you are.
Yeah, I mean, I think it reads really well when things are going well and things turn around like last year, but it's really frustrating to watch. But I don't know. I mean, my personal opinion is I'm over like the extreme home makeover pitching rotations every year. Like, bring me in a certifiable arm that can pitch every fifth day. So that is my biggest beef with this team right now. I'm kind of over like the reclamation pitching projects and just give me a reputable arm or two that we can count on. Pitchers break, we know that, but as a very loyal Jacob deGrom fan, I really miss having a top line pitcher on our pitching staff.
Now, speaking of your dog is named Jake, will Jake ever get any uh, fellow dogs named Lindor or Alonso or Acuna after Luis Angel if he ever decides to learn how to hit the ball?
I mean, very similar to Mr. DeGrom. Jake DePup over here is also very expensive, so he probably has no siblings coming anytime soon. So the price tag is also pretty high on this little guy. So he's a high maintenance pup, just like his namesake. And so no, probably not anytime soon. But he is. Yes, my dog is named after Jacob deGrom.
Hey, I mean, being a Met fan is one of those things. Now, you have your bachelor's in mathematics. What
I do.
was the transition going from being in mathematics to sport management? Like, what was that like for you?
Yeah, I mean it was definitely a little bit of an unconventional path when I was very young, before I even went to college. I wanted to be a sports broadcaster. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to do play-by-play and that was originally what I went for my undergrad for was broadcast journalism. And I sort of switched about halfway through and was like, maybe I'll be a teacher. And so I was going to be a math teacher at one juncture and got to the final stretches of that and said, absolutely not. This is not the right path for me. So I was really lucky as an undergraduate student that all 4 years that I was at SUNY Plattsburgh, I had a job in the athletic department. And it was a tremendous work opportunity. I was able to take on supervision roles. And when I finished my bachelor's in math, I said, well, now what am I going to do? What am I going to move on to? And it was that work experience that I gained during my undergrad educational experience that sort of then put me on the trajectory to seek out grad programs in sport management and take more of an administrative turn. So I like to tell people I kind of got back to where I wanted to be when I was much younger. I'm not necessarily in front of the screen, but I definitely did land in the sports sector. So that was how I ended up making that segue from being a aspiring math teacher to a sport administrator.
When you were with the Binghamton Mets, was there one player that you remember seeing on a frequent basis that you knew would be a star?
Really interesting. So that year, the 2008 Binghamton Mets were terrible in Binghamton. They were not good. They were a bad team. And they ended up producing a ridiculous amount of big leaguers, which makes no sense given how bad that team was in Double A. So hear me out. The 2008 Mets included Mets postseason legend Dan Murphy, um, John Neese, Bobby Parnell, Eddie Coons, who had a cup of coffee in the Mets bullpen. Um, Dylan G was on the 2008 Mets at one point. Uh, he flamed out, but Fernando Martinez, the teenage hitting machine, was on the 2008 B Mets. So it in hindsight, it appears that it was a stacked team, but they did not excel in the Eastern League. But um, but Dan Murphy just was of a different makeup. You didn't know really how he was going to perform at the big leagues, but the night he got called up from Double A, he was leaving the ballpark and he literally walked out, and people were like, good luck," as he was getting called up to Triple A. And his words as he left was like, "See you never. I won't be back." And so he just had that mental makeup of he was going to keep pushing no matter what and at least get there. And it ended up that he did. I mean, he was never a stellar defender, but I will never forget his player intros in Double A where he said, "I'm Dan Murphy and I hit third." It wasn't about defense, it was about being a hitter, and he proved that when he went on to have a successful major league career. But yeah, stacked team in the weirdest way, but you definitely saw something different in him during that time.
A quick Fernando Martinez story. Well, when he got to the Mets, they were out here in Wisconsin. They played the Brewers. He was playing center field. He went back for a ball. I think was hit by Ryan Braun. He somehow got his cleat caught. That was the end of his career right there. That's when his knee decided to go bye-bye. And I was like, and I knew because he laid there and he rolled around the field. I'm like, oh no. And you just knew it was
This
about to be over.
this is the end. Yeah. Yeah, he was definitely like a Mets prospect enigma. So that was a fizzle out fast kind of a persona for sure.
Now, when you joined the United East, it was in the time of, oh, I guess 6 years into it, there was a merger between the United East and the CSAC. What was that like trying to facilitate a merger between two conferences?
It was really unique. It was super challenging. At the same time, we had two groups that were really collegial throughout the process. I think they were our group collectively was a group of institutions that really was trying to see the long game. They were trying to really take stock of where we were, coming out of post-COVID, 3.5, 4 years after that moment, and then really looking ahead to what are we about to experience with decreasing enrollment and external pressures that are continuing to really change the scope and the environment of higher education. And so to really be in a room with people who were trying to come at something in an unconventional way, it was it was two groups that said, we're done poaching schools from other conferences, taking one from here and you taking one from us. It's not producing the stability that we want it to. And so, what's a move that we can make that might seem a little out of the box to really create some stability in the event of contraction, which subsequently we have experienced. So it ended up being a very forward thinking move, but there was no handbook to it. That's what I tell anyone when I talk about it. There was no, hey, call this other person who's brought two collective conferences together in this type of a way. And so we really had to be creative. We had to sort of build things as we were going day by day by day. But I like a good challenge, and it was certainly that, but I'm also glad that we're kind of on the other side of it now too.
Changing structure of college as far as the NIL era and just how the house settlement has kind of changed things. where does the United East stand as far as watching everything kind of transpire within college athletics?
I think it's hard for institutions within our conference and of our varying sizes within the United East because we know we are not big athletic revenue generators. So we are not sitting here, kind of counting the pennies of what type of revenue do we need to kick back out to student athletes in the future, what kind of NIL deals. They're very inconsequential right now that are impacting our student athletes in that nature. The concerns about different state laws and regulations continues to be a concern, without really there's still not really guidance. I mean, we keep saying that there's, settlement and we're working on things at the federal level, but it's still very confusing and piecemeal for folks. I think the biggest concern for schools within the United East is what are the unintended consequences, so to speak, where when we sit in meetings with NCAA staff, folks will continue to really say to us, we don't expect the House settlement to have a lot of trickle down on Division III. I don't know
Uh,
if that's true. I think that as there continues to be conversations at Division I and Division II about eligibility, expanding eligibility, and things of that nature, there are some concerns within Division III folks of how much of that starts to pervade what we do and how many of those issues will our hand be forced legally as opposed to what we may or may not actually want to do. And I think the verdict's still out on all of that for us right now.
we mentioned how the enrollment cliff, when you watch how it has affected D3 athletics and just D3 institutions, was it something that people saw coming, or was it something that kind of not came out of nowhere, but it was more of a gradual process?
I think it's been really interesting because I can recall 7, 8 years ago, really starting to hear that become the buzzword of we are projecting lower enrollment numbers, lower population of high school grads. And that was very much the spin we were getting. And then we went through the COVID period, which was just obviously a very strange segment of our timeline of history. And with that, honestly, because there was some financial relief throughout COVID, it kind of kept some institutions afloat to get through that really difficult period. And I think almost kind of like delay the impact on some of the declining enrollment. And I think now you've seen in the last, 18 to 24 months that we've started to see a little bit of a speed pickup of institutions identifying that they're really struggling financially or their numbers are down significantly. And so it's definitely real. And as a conference who has institutions with enrollment under 1,000, it's real. I mean, the numbers are not ticking up from an enrollment standpoint in a significant way. They are either staying relatively stagnant or ticking down in some cases. Some of our institutions have had some very successful recruitment classes and been able to see some really good numbers. But it's hard to tell right now if it's kind of a one-off, an anomaly, a small sample size, or if there is some trajectory out of it that might exist in the future.
In doing research for this, I was looking at some of the interesting partnerships where you discuss the partnership with Spry.
Mhm. Discuss that.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, please.
So for us, we're always looking for partners with our conference that are really willing to work with us in a sense of we are very much a mix. When you look at the United East, if you want to look at a cross section of what Division III actually looks like, take a look at the United East. We have some larger institutions, we have some very small institutions, we have public institutions, private, and a deaf and hard of hearing school. So you get a little bit of everything in the United East. And when we enter into partnerships with folks, we one want to provide them access to a product or some type of support that's going to make their lives easier because all of our folks are strapped fiscally, personnel wise, time wise. And so entering into a partnership like the one that we did with Spry, it does provide some athletic management software to our institutions who elect to use them. But also, our partnerships need to have some flexibility to them in the sense that when you have a large conference of 14 or 15 or 17 institutions, it's very hard to get a 17-0 adoption of a product, as opposed to if you have 6 or 7 folks in the room. We have all kinds of different red tape when you look at the mix of institutions that we have. Um, if institution A can adopt the software, that doesn't mean that my Penn State schools can adopt the software because they may have different contractual obligations. So partnerships that are willing to work with us in the way that we create a partnership and being able to help and support our institutions that take advantage of those partnerships is really key to us as a conference.
Partnership that was definitely something that these discussion is the one with MindFlow, where the mental health aspects are addressed and students are provided with help.
Yeah. Yeah, our we've been working over the last couple years since our merger to really seek out a partnership to provide some mental health support, whether it be to our administrators, to our student athletes, because we know that this is a critically important issue for our student athletes. They continue to say that to us, and it's very obvious that this is something that they would like us to focus on. That said, as we see increasing mental health needs with our student athletes, we also need to provide the support to our coaches and our administrators and our support staff that are tasked with supporting our student athletes. Their mental health matters too. And so we took some time to really look around at the different service providers in that space. And MindFlow was one that we really connected with. One thing that we have to be mindful of as a conference is that if we partner with anyone in this space or another, some may be app-based services and maybe, video content driven or meditational driven. For us, we have to always ensure that anything that we provide is accessible to our deaf and hard of hearing student athletes and their staff. And so that's also kind of an evaluation tool that we take when we meet with folks for a partnership. So the folks from MindFlow have been tremendous partners, and we're really excited to launch this partnership where we will have a training program for coaches and administrators as sort of a conference cohort this year. They will go through 3 training dates to really help develop mental health skills, particularly to support student athletes. And so we're super excited to partner with them. We can't wait to really launch this and hope that it is a much added benefit to our member institutions.
Exciting kind of recent developments I've been reading, and people have put in my inbox is discussing how the United East is switching women's flag football from club to varsity, which I cannot tell you how many people are excited about this and how people in their specific areas are trying to pressure their local conferences to do the exact same. What was the impetus behind it, and how exciting just to have it be one of the few conferences that will have a varsity level flag football? Like, how exciting is that for you?
It's so exciting. I wish that I could go back and play women's flag football. And I'll be very candid when our conference colleagues at the Atlantic East announced it a couple years ago, myself and my staff, we were intrigued, but we were also skeptical of, is this something that really is a groundswell type sport? That being said, I really challenge my staff, like, let's stay open-minded, let's explore every opportunity. And if I ask that of my staff, I have to challenge myself to do the same. And so not last spring, but the spring before. So I think May of 23 or 24, I don't know, the years all blend together. Um, a bunch of us who had expressed interest in the sport were invited to Atlanta, where the NFL and RCX Sports host the flag finals, and in conjunction with the Falcons. And the first night of that event was essentially like a recruiting combine with young girls from that area and a number of institutions recruiting them. And then the next day were some of the championship games. And coming away from that event and seeing the energy, the interest level in those young women who wanted to pursue this outside of the youth or high school level, and just the excitement and the athleticism around it. I cannot compare it to another emerging sport for women with the energy that has been behind it. And so I brought it back to my conference folks and said, give this a whirl. Let's be ahead because this is something that I really believed in my gut that was going to really take off. And knowing that we only had one other Division III conference at the time that was pursuing sponsorship of it at the varsity level, I really encouraged our folks to we have a geographic footprint that sits on top of states that are either sanctioning it or piloting it at the high school level. And let's be ahead of it and provide collegiate opportunities in this space. So we ran a club season last spring that was very short and condensed, but successful. And this year, we anticipate having 6 to 8 teams on the field for our first varsity season. And I am super, super excited to hand out our first conference trophy in this sport this spring. It's even last year at the club level, the excitement on the field and even the excitement it was generating on campus when they would host a game, the number of folks coming out to watch and wanting to be there and see it. It's just really cool. It's really cool for young women to have an opportunity to play this sport and see it grow. And I just really hope this becomes kind of a marquee sport for our young ladies moving forward.
Much of a urge did you get to find the cleats, kind of put on some gloves and take take a few passes? Like I'll go out and try to catch a few.
I mean, I'd love to. I am so jealous of these young ladies and even seeing some of the young women in Atlanta. I mean, whew, I was so jealous of how I just they were so athletic and yeah, I wish I could rewind and go out there and play. But I'm not getting any younger, so I probably need to be careful about how many things I try to do like that these days.
Now, as a Met fan, if you could pick one Mets pitcher, Game 7, need to win it, World Series on the line, well, which has happened a few times. Who do you want having the ball?
I mean, just by nature of Mets history, you probably have to say Seaver, but I mean, you just have to say that. Um, but I'm never going to turn away my guy Jake. I'm sorry. And he proved in 2015 when he was very young that he can be a machine in the postseason when he's healthy. So, and he was the only Met that won the only game in 2022 in that wild card series that they blew against the Padres. So, you know, I'm you have to say Seaver, but I stand by my guy Jake.
It's funny when you look at DeGrom and you look at player like that, you kind of say, you know what, he might come back. It's like that thought that, you know what, he might finish up here. He's one of those endearing Mets that never got in trouble, never had a cross word to say about anyone, but was just really just a good player. Are there any young Mets, any we mentioned Luis Acuna. Between Acuna, Brett Beatty, and Irania Mauricio, which one of them do you think will be the best professional player or best major league player and will stick with the team the longest?
Ooh. Um, I don't know if any of them will be with the team long distance, but listen, I'm here to say I know that Mark Vientos has not been good this year, but I think that if the Mets would stop moving him around the infield and just let him be the designated hitter for a while, I actually think he could settle into that role. But I don't love how he's been developed between AAA and the major leagues, and I actually think it's been pretty detrimental to him because I do think that he does have some really unique power as a hitter. I just don't know if he has the ability to have longevity in his career. I think time will tell on that. But I will be honest, of the four, I still am a Mark Vientos fan over the others.
He's the only one that has proven that he could stay and play. He hit over 25 home runs last year. With the other guys, they show flashes, but then they'll go 1 for 18 in the next 4 days or 5 days or next week. They're frustrating. As a commissioner, what is the most underrated part of your job?
The most underrated part of my job. Um, ooh, that's a tough question. Um, I mean, my favorite days that people don't see are the days that I get to just go to one of my member campuses, and it isn't even necessarily like a championship day. It's just a random Wednesday when I'm on campus and I get to meet with folks, and sometimes I get the opportunity to just sit and talk with student athletes and then get to talk to the coaches. And sure, it's challenging. Sometimes they fire away, tough questions at you, but you leave those days and you're such you're reminded in such a unique way of why we kind of deal with the stressors that we do on a day-to-day basis, and what we're really trying to do is just provide really great experiences for student athletes. And what a cool job to be able to do that. And you know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, we all have nonsense in all of our jobs, but to be able to go to bed at night and say, like, my primary function and purpose is to provide positive experiences for student athletes. And and trying to remember that every day to me can be very underrated because of all the other noise in the world that we deal with. So I think that's what I would say.
Commissioner of the United East Conference, Stephanie Dutton. Commissioner Dutton, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Ad Drop Podcast.
Thank you for having me.